Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Take a motion at this time to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Steve and a second by Craig to approve the agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we take any public comment if there's any to address the council at this time. Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward to the next item on the agenda. It being the time and place for the public hearing in regard to the proposed budget for fiscal year 2013 and 14, I, Mayor Sean Dietz, will open the public hearing at 6:01 p.m. and offer City Manager Duck to bring us up to date on the resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. We have on the agenda public hearing, of course, on the proposed budget, and then following up with Resolution 2013-06, which is a resolution adopting the annual budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014. The final budget, as proposed, ends up with a $12.80 levy, total levy. The levy is reduced by, I think, 80 cents, and this is directly due to the employee benefits fund having some fund balance that we're going to use up. The general levy, the $8.10 levy, that is not the reason. That's still at $8.10. That's the state max. That stays the same. So the reason is the employee benefits levy has some fund surplus that will be used up. We had a number of budget meetings. We've discussed a lot of things, and I guess I would ask if anybody has any questions in particular of a particular subject that they'd like to touch on, or the forms that are in front of you are the state forms. The budget meetings, we use the in-house software looking at the line item, the expenditure line items and revenue line items, and that information is now transferred to the state forms. It's a different format, looks different, it's the same numbers, and once approved, this will get submitted to the state. If approved, then tomorrow it will be submitted to the state and county. Does anybody have any questions before we open it up to public comment?
I still have one question. I'd asked you earlier about this dehumidifier for the water plant.
Yes.
And we have this range of 1 to 25,000, and Tom Madden was going to get back to us and give us a little more information on that, since that's a huge range.
Well, yeah, we ended up recommending that we budget 25,000, fully knowing that we aren't going to spend 25,000, but we're doing some research. Doug was, I don't know, he can verify whether he's heard from Tom yet. We're talking to staff members about different options as far as the dehumidifying process of the water plant. And so, given the unknowns, we decided to budget on the high side, but yet we know we're not going to spend 25,000, but we not sure what the amount is that we are going to spend. So we thought it was safe to budget on the high side. Of course, our goal is to spend the least amount as necessary to, but yet still dehumidify the plant proper. Doug, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, basically Tom and I haven't gotten back together on that just yet. We have a local contractor, Murphy's Plumbing and Heating, that gave us an estimate to do the project. It's not a difficult installation per se, but the one that's in there to replace it, you know, for us to buy, I did see we could buy factory direct for about $18,000 if we go with that. But one of the other options was to look at some smaller types that could potentially be purchased locally too. Chuck Murphy from the wastewater plant has utilized some small ones in some of the other water plants that he works in the surrounding areas, and thought maybe those would be sufficient. But I still want to talk to Tom to find out a little bit more in depth as far as how many cubic feet we're going to be working with there, and and to actually dehumidify, because basically what happens is if you don't, it's wear and tear on the equipment that's in the water treatment plant. It'll get condensation, and it'll actually, it could just start raining on a hot, humid day, and that basically what it feels like anyway, because the pipes and everything will get dripping with condensation water and stuff, and it's hard on equipment. So that's a lot of it. You know, keeping things, trying to keep a control on the humidity inside the plant will help the paint, it'll help equipment, it'll help, you know, you could potentially get mold. So you could have some issues, but if some small ones will work and do the trick, maybe that will. I've talked to the water plant guys. They advised that they'd had some small ones in years past. Why they went to the big one, I don't know a whole lot about. I still got some more legwork to do on it yet. So, but I just took budget on the air caution in case we do have to go with the big one. Winter time's not a big deal. It's not as, you know, it's not as bad, but you know, summer heat, things start sweating in there. And we used to go through computers left and right, and a lot of that has to do with chlorine as well, obviously, but moisture's not good for any of the electronic components out there either. So.
Have you given Tom a timeline?
No.
They're kind of looking into?
No.
Like, is this something we need to be doing before summer?
Before summer? I don't know. I think we could probably put it together in a short amount of time if we have to. I really don't think it's going to be it's nothing we need an engineer to basically procure or anything like that. You know, it's basically just buying it and installing it. So we either use the local guy, or we buy it through a local guy, do it ourselves, or we buy it back. I mean, there's just a lot of different options there, and we'll try to figure out what the best option is going to be, and to achieve the goal that we need to, which is, you know, basically have a dehumidifier in there and take care of some of the humidity on them hot, sultry summer days.
Have we checked with other communities that might have facilities similar in size to ours to see what they're using, what is working, what isn't working?
No.
In an effort to save those dollars?
I haven't yet. I can give a call to Iowa Rural Water. I mean, we have a ton of those contacts in the industry. I called to Mason City, see what they got going. I used to work up there, so we got plenty of contacts to talk to some other folks just to see. So
you mentioned Trev. Have you had a chance to get together with him to look at the facilities that he's?
No, he offered one day, and I was gone that day. So he offered to take me over to I think it was Latimer. Is that where it's at, Trev? So yeah, so we can sure do that yet, but haven't really been in a hurry because I thought we were going to be at that 25 grand mark just to be on the safe side. So
But an actual,
we don't have to spend it.
an actual purchase, will that come before us, before that purchase would actually happen?
Yeah. We'll bring it to the council.
Okay.
Show you what the options are and what the recommendations are.
Okay.
Anything else from you, Ron?
No, any other questions?
Any comment from the public regarding the budget at this time? Any public hearing? Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll close the public hearing then at 6:09. Okay. Next item on the agenda is consideration of whether to continue the fluoridation of Hampton's water supply. Bring this to the council for consideration. What I'm asking for tonight is for council approval to instruct the city attorney to draft an ordinance to repeal the current ordinance that requires the city to fluoridate water. And the reason for that is my own personal feeling is I don't believe it to be necessary. I know it was discussed years ago. And I think it's used as a medicine, and I think what it amounts to is medication of the citizens that I don't find to be necessary. And I'd be happy to open up discussion at this time. If I could have Ron actually, if you would go through the history that you sent to the council a little bit. Sorry.
sorry. Yeah, in 1975, the council approved an ordinance to authorize fluoridation of the public water supply. And then in 1990 or 2000, the water department, Trev Murphy, indicated to the city council that he was reactivating well 3 that had been unused for some time. And well 3 has a higher natural level of fluoride than other wells that run through the treatment plant. And as a result, he stopped adding fluoride to the water. There was no formal council action to do so, so the ordinance still was intact that we would add fluoride to the water. March 27, 2002, there was an editorial in the Chronicle regarding bringing back well 3 online and ceasing manual fluoridation of the water. In 2005, this came up for discussion. The local dentist became aware that the city had ceased adding fluoride to the water, and there was a public movement to persuade the city to start adding fluoride. So we started looking into the process of what needed to be done. If the city decided to rescind the ordinance, they would have to do it by another ordinance. And there was some public meetings in November, December 2005. There was one initial reading to approve an ordinance that would rescind the original ordinance, number 130. And ultimately that failed. It got sent back to committee in January of 06. February of 06, City Services Committee, the consensus was that they wanted to see a vote of the people decide the fluoride issue, and we had looked into that with the state, and that was not an item that could be put on a ballot. So in February of 06, the City Services Committee met again and reversed its prior recommendations and advised staff to acquire the equipment, train the staff, and begin adding fluoride to the water as Ordinance 130 provided. And the city has been adding fluoride ever since.
Trev, did you want to add anything to that? I know you were there at the time.
Originally, when we eliminated the first time, the well we put online had a natural fluoride.
Trev, I'm sorry, can you come up to the mic?
Originally, when we stopped adding fluoride, it was the chemical form. I felt we had enough natural fluoride in well 3 at the time, which was a 1.0. The optimal level today is a 0.7, 1.2 parts per million. So I felt that fell in line, and we stopped adding it just to save the town a little money. I just felt the natural fluoride was a better fluoride than the chemical version. In a way, I wasn't trying to eliminate it. I just felt we already had it in the water. Do you have any other questions?
What did you say that those levels were 0.7 to 1.2? That's the acceptable?
It used to be higher on the lower end, but I think and the dentist in town could probably tell you, but I think they've been putting fluoride in a lot of other times, so they actually lowered it a little bit on the water level side. So.
You said when you first brought it online, it was 1.0. Is it still that level?
I believe
Gone up or
is.
down?
Yeah. No, it stays pretty constant. And actually, the other wells out there, they have a 0.3 to 0.4 parts per million in natural fluoride in those too. So.
I was gonna say, most of the wells in the state of Iowa have a certain amount of fluoridation. I know Kohler did and Latimer does.
Some towns are pretty high. I think Ansell's almost a 2.0. Latimer's right around like a 0.3, 0.4. So is Alexander.
Depends on which aquifer you're hooked into.
Exactly.
So if we got water that's already at 0.3 at a minimum, how much are we adding now?
But maybe
We're bringing it up right to a 1.0, between a 0.8 and 1.0. I contacted DNR today. There's a,
Can you come up to
Oh,
the
I'm
mic
sorry.
too? Sorry.
last year there was brought up many discussions on to lower it down to a 0.6 and a 0.8 parts per million. And I talked to DNR today, and they said there's been no final results on that at all. So it's been pretty much tabled, he said. So right now, the standards still are a 0.8 and a 1.0. The problem we have is well 3 has a 1.0, which is great. DNR requires a source entry point sampling. So that means you have to take the sample from where you're putting in. So when at the end of my 30 days, I have to after I calculate up all the testing, it has to add up in between that 0.8 and 1.0. So if you're taking the sample from the water treatment plant where DNR wants you to take it at, then you're only gonna end up with 0.4. So at the end of the month, you're below your average. So it's kind of, it gets
If you're
a
not
little
adding.
fine level. Yeah,
If
if
you're
you're not
not
adding, yes. But as long as we're adding it, then we're still staying right at that level, so.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so you know, well 3 is not used every day. That's part of it too. The well 3 is one of those wells that we have a blended system. You know, we have the wells out at the industrial park, then we have well 3 here in town. Well 3, how often do we run it, Terry?
Probably twice a week.
So once you add into some of their averages, that's what's gonna dig into your averages. You have 0.3 is getting blended in with the 1.0. Finding that consistency is difficult. Not saying I'm for or against it, I'm just providing you the information that it's not as easy as saying the well 3s, but we do have natural fluoride and a pretty good natural fluoride content that's pretty close to what the DNR recommends already.
Any discussion from council on the matter? No, we've got the dentist in attendance. Do they want to add anything?
So I think those gentlemen made a pretty good point there, that the way our water system is set up, that without something to balance it, to even it out, it's hard to get the kind of fluoride we want to see consistently in the water. By adding it in, they can give us the ideal. There isn't any doubt that fluoride is beneficial. It's supported by the CDC, the American Dental Association, the Iowa Dental Association. Last time when this came up, we brought those people in, those council members that were, we had a complete turnover. You're still here, Greg, you're about it.
Steve was here.
Steve, that's right, you were here. And they got to hear those people talk. We brought up the preeminent researcher in fluoride from Iowa, Dr. Stephen Levy, who explained a lot of the stuff that people were reading on the internet. Some of it even distorted out of his own research, showing the benefit. It's been shown repeatedly that it'll decrease the amount of decay about 40%. Since we put it back in, there may be some of you children that have seen the effect. I know we aren't sending out children with complete mouths full of decay like we were before we found out it had been turned off. And so I can speak, at least from my practice, I'm seeing less problems and less damage to the kids. Now, fluoride doesn't just help kids, it will help adults too. And so people that are experiencing some decay, that's a real problem. Or it's very beneficial for them too. I would also suggest that there are a number of other associations that also support fluoridating city water. As for a medication, I don't really think fluoride qualifies as medication, Mayor Sean. There are many things that we're putting in our water. And I guess I would ask this question: if you're going to take fluoride out, you take the other stuff out too. We have flocculants we're putting in there, a number of other things, and some of those are as caustic and nasty as anything else you can come across. I'm not sure why you pick fluoride out of the choices to remove. But I think you're going to harm your citizens if you take it out. We talked for 9 months about this last time. The council gave the decision that they didn't want to take that chance. The choice is yours again. I would suggest to you, though, that if you do that and citizens are harmed, that will be a concern. I'd there any questions you had from our standpoint? I didn't know that this was the situation. I thought you were just merely going to be talking a little bit about it. I didn't know we needed to defend it again. But if there is additional information that you want from the dental sector, we'd certainly be glad to provide it for you. The state of Iowa came up last time, spent considerable time and effort talking with the council members to explain to them the benefit. And Hampton even received an award from the state after we reinstituted it. I don't really want to see us show poor dental IQ to the rest of the state. I think that is a real bad choice. We're actively attempting to recruit dental people into the community, and this is not the kind of thing that's going to help us when it appears in the Department Register that Hampton shut off its fluoride again. And thank you. If there are any further questions, we'd certainly be glad to answer them either now or at a later date.
I've got one.
Yeah.
I think the timeline that you gave us, Ron, the fluorine was, the extra fluorine, the added fluorine was out of the water for 5 years, from 2000 to 2005.
Yeah, roughly.
The figures that you were quoting as far as seeing an increase, I'm just curious, the increase in cavities that you saw, does it happen in 6 months or a year? Or
It's a slow thing. It doesn't happen overnight, no. And it happens in conjunction with other things. You can stave it off with better hygiene, but oftentimes people aren't aware of that. We just slowly started seeing an increase, and we were casting about wondering what was going on and why. Before Dennis and town were all seeing an increase. We couldn't figure out why, because it was still being shown in the DNR's reports as being at 1 part per million. And it wasn't. And it was supposed to be in there. There was an active ordinance in place that said it would be done, and it was not being done. Then we went back, put it back in. I think that's exactly what you should do, is continue it now. You don't want to damage the public. I would also suggest to you that be very, very careful when you read on the internet. Last time we discovered there was a lot of false information out there. Much of it was distorted from very good authors. Anybody can put anything out there. It's just really easy to do. And I would be very, very careful when I read about, but when the University of Iowa tells me, and one of the preeminent researchers say, this is what we should do. When the state of Iowa says it, when the CDC says it, I gotta believe. Here, one of the things I think is one of the oddest things, and that was mentioned last time to us, is here are 3 dentists, there's hygienists, there's other people involved here. None of us have anything to gain. In fact, we have something to lose. Obviously, if the decay rate went up, we would make more money. And yet we're here appealing to you to not let that happen, because we don't want to see the damage to the children and the adults in Hampton. And I think the concern about fluoride in the water is a misplaced concern. But we see a lot of that on the internet these days. Any other questions that I could answer for you?
I know they add this to toothpaste, for instance.
Yes.
Have they changed those levels over the
No.
years, or has that been consistent?
No, that's
all
why
along?
you're seeing them slowly lower the levels that they want in city water, because the companies are so confident this is a benefit to the people. They keep putting more in, more products. And so you're seeing some of the bottled waters now, they're putting it in there. A lot of the toothpaste, almost all the toothpaste have fluoride. If it's approved by the American Dental Association, it is. And so they're able to lower a little bit because we're getting a little more in our normal diet. But I think that shows you too the confidence that all those companies have in the benefit of fluoride. Any other questions?
My question is, so, they're coming down on what they put in, like the toothpaste, the mouthwash and stuff. where I get confused, you're right, there is a lot of information out there. I did try to look at reputable, resources. But with the fluoride in the water, and I'm ignorant to this, I'm just trying to understand, I'm drinking it, okay? With it in the toothpaste and the mouthwash, and when I go to the hygienist, they don't want you swallowing that. When you have small children, you're supposed to be standing there when they're brushing their teeth. Make sure you spit all that out. So there's where I'm confused.
Well, if you're using concentrated fluoride,
Mhm.
we use some materials that are very, very strong where we want absorption at the site right now. And those aren't too strong for the stomach. A lot of the fluorides in the toothpaste, you don't want the little kids to swallow just because it upsets their stomach. And they don't, moms don't like it when they're talking about your toes. So, if you get too much fluoride at minor levels, and there are wells around here that are that way, the worst you get is a little novel, which means you get a little bit of whiteness in them in different places, and you have a cloudy effect. And that's not considered. You gotta go so far above before you really get detrimental effects. But it's like anything, good in moderation.
So how is it beneficial though? I mean, because like I said, I've been trying to think about this. As I'm drinking my water, I know it goes over my teeth a little bit, but I mean, for the most part, and I drink a lot of water. How is that beneficial to my teeth when?
Well, in forming enamel,
Okay.
it will actually take it through the system and becomes part of the enamel. On adults, where the enamel is completely formed, it's merely absorbed into the surface. And that's why it's more beneficial for children than it is for adults, but it still does benefit. And that's why we do fluoride treatments after cleaning, to get that to absorb into the enamel and strengthen the enamel. It makes it stronger than natural enamel.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, I have a question. Why is it that when I go to my hygienist and then my dental insurance will not cover fluoride treatments?
Well, dental insurance is one of those interesting things, Craig. We'll see 6 policies from the same company. Pick a business, they may have 6 different policies. I guarantee you the CEO's got a different one than the guy down at the bottom. I guarantee it. And so it sort of falls on where your policy was purchased and how much you're willing to spend. It's kind of like the advertisement on TV about insurance. We'll make a policy to fit whatever you want to pay, which means if you don't want to pay anything, the policy's not going to cover anything. And it's the same way with the dental. If you're willing to put in a large payment, they will cover crowns and bridges and ortho and all of those things, fluoride twice a year and cleanings and all that. But if you don't have a high payment, then they're going to start paring things out. And oftentimes people are even allowed, in the workplace to pick which ones they want to drop. Of course, if you have employees that have dentures, they are going to want to drop those fluoride treatments, and they're going to want to drop some of those other things. So I wouldn't judge it by the insurance, what's provided. You do what's good for you, and not what is covered by the insurance. The insurance is merely there to help you defray the costs.
Okay, that gives me another question.
Sure.
Then, and you might not be able to answer this, I just thought of this. Okay, so for communities that choose not to put the fluoride in the water, do they have the option, is there a product out there that you can buy water that has fluoride in it?
Well, now it starts getting to be really difficult, because how do you balance that? You got a mom with little kids, and how does she make sure they get the ideal amount? And it puts the burden on those people, which is really difficult, and that's why we have government. Government takes care of those things for people. Everybody could build a swimming pool, but it's a whole lot easier to have the city do it and the city manage it, even though we know it's not going to be a winner. You aren't going to make any money on a swimming pool. You aren't going to make any money putting fluoride in water. But if you quit doing it and dump that responsibility back onto all the individuals, it becomes really difficult for each household to try and figure out what's the ideal. And sometimes we have rural people that come in, first they have to have their water tested. Well, in Hampton, that's tough because, did they draw out a well 3 or not? We don't know. when the water all went through the filtration plant, it was fairly easy. You knew what was coming out. But now, we're drawing from different sources, so we don't really know what's coming out of it naturally without constantly checking it. And, you know, when they say, how often do you run it? Well, maybe twice a week, it makes it more difficult. If you're on rural, and you're living out on a farm, you're drawing out of one well, you test that well, and you know exactly what's in it and what's coming out of it. And so then mom can go ahead and say, okay, let's go for fluoride and vitamins, or a couple of drops, or whatever, you know. But it's a lot easier to have the city provide that service and balance the water for everyone, so they don't all have to try to figure it out on their own. Any other questions?
We got one more. Some of the fallacies that you referred to, what are a couple of the fallacies that are out there in the information circle that are really just not true?
About every terrible disease that you can think of that nobody can find a solution for gets attributed to something. Kind of like a few years ago when cranberries caused cancer and they destroyed the cranberry business. You know, somebody decided and put it out in the public. You know, and that's the same kind of thing that has happened with fluoride. If you can't find a solution for a terrible disease that you have, MS, cancer, you know, then you start casting about looking for something that you can put the blame on. But there has been no research in any of the credible universities that have shown there's actually any disease. Nothing. The worst that we can come up with is some modeling of the dentition. Really hard, but perhaps not quite as aesthetic and beautiful.
I would just add one thing or question. You mentioned that you weren't sure about the medicinal definition, whether or not fluoride was definition. I guess if you could explain the reason to fluoridate is you see tooth decay, you see a health issue, so then the fix to that would be fluoride. So would that not then by definition be a medicinal treatment for that condition?
A filter cleans dirty water, but it's certainly not medicine. I mean, the fluoride, to me, a medicine treats an illness, you know, and we're not really, we're treating dental decay, I guess, if you want to call that an illness. But I think you're reaching.
Well, no,
But to me, it's just simply an additive. I mean, it's not like you're putting Prozac in everybody's water. Might make a happier town. Make everybody happier about the snow. But I mean, we're not talking about the same thing. You're not going to change behaviors. You're not going to kill bacteria. You know, I guess in my world, I'm so used to dealing with medicines as treatment for bacterial disease, viral disease, those kinds of things. Sean, and I wasn't trying to be negative to you.
No, that's fine.
We're talking about an additive for water, not really adding medicine in.
Okay.
So I think about it.
But it is added to treat a condition.
Well, decrease the decay,
Okay.
strengthen the bones. But, you know, I mean, that's what we're after.
Anything else?
Anything else I can, if you think of anything, please feel free to call any of our offices. We'd all be glad to talk with you about anything along this order at any time. Okay, thank you.
I appreciate you all coming out and responding to my letter. Thank you.
You bet.
Any further discussion from the, Diane's on. Hello.
Diane Weldon, 211, very slushy 18th Avenue Northeast, Hampton. I'm here to speak just on a school nurse perspective and what we see in school. We try to provide as much education as we can to the students at school. And a lot of them still don't have the opportunity to brush their teeth at home. So we have lots of students come in and brush their teeth at school. And you do have to be very careful. You only want to use about a pea-sized amount of fluoridated toothpaste on the toothbrush. And it's probably been like 3 years ago, we did a fluoride rinse every week to our children, usually 2nd grade through 4th grade. And then the state took that program away because of money costs and budgets and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm sure the state would be very approving of the fluoride in the water. We'll have kids come into the office complaining of toothaches, and you look in their mouths and they've got a really deep cavity or the tooth is broken off at the gum line. And I would hate to see what the rest of their teeth would look like if we didn't have fluoride in the water to help these children. You talk about maybe taking out of the water and have your medical care provider prescribe that for you. That's pretty expensive to provide that. And like Dr. Sensor said, how do you monitor how much they're getting, in the water as you're adding it to the water? These kids then obviously have got to see a dentist, and it's very difficult for those that are underinsured or have Title 19 to find dental care providers. And I can understand the dentist's viewpoint on that because they get paid hardly enough to cover their office expenses. And of course, medical care providers are always on the chopping block for a lawsuit. Dentists, doctors, myself as a nurse, whatever. And anyway, if the dentist were to get sued, they don't, and it's a Title 19 person or an underinsured patient, they have not made enough money on that visit probably to cover what their insurance would cost, let alone attorney representation, whatever, to carry through this case. Many times it's too late to save the tooth that's so bad if it's broken off or highly decayed. Needs to be pulled. Oftentimes spacers need to be put in. It's just a lot of additional cost and a lot of additional cost. And along with that comes some social issues for the students. They'll have really bad breath. And yet, really young elementary students pick up on that. They'll have bad breath, they're missing a tooth, they get teased because they don't have a tooth, and it leads to a lot more health issues than just bad teeth, gingivitis, gum disease. It can affect the heart, kidneys, major organs of your body if you let your teeth go. The extra cost to provide fluoride from a medical care provider is already incorporated into what we pay for the city water. And everybody gets a water bill, and I don't think there's any extra charge for fluoride being added to the water. That's a benefit that's provided for you. When these kids go to the dentist, it's not quick in and out check. There's work to be done, and it's repeated visits, and then you run into school absenteeism, and parents need to take time off from work to get their kids to the dentist and the proper medical dental care that they need. I don't think you can supplement fluoride with mouthwashes and toothpaste and that sort of thing. That constant ingestion through the water, and believe you me, the kids at school do drink a lot of water. And I see a real big benefit in having the fluoride in the water, so I would hope it would continue. So thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am. Anything else?
Just wanted to clarify one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Trent.
When I was at the water plant in 2003, I just want, especially this town, to realize I wasn't eliminating the fluoride. I ran that well every day from like midnight to 2 a.m. The well 3, they had a natural 1.0 fluoride in it. So it's not like I was trying to eliminate the fluoride, I just felt we had a natural fluoride. So after 2003, they stopped running the well every day. The practice changed from the way it was originally designed. So I just wanted to clarify that real quick.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have one thing. Randy Klein, Hampton Val. You asked if fluoride treats a disease. Now, I'm a registered dental hygienist. I'm not a dentist, but in my understanding, when someone has a cavity, if there's a cavity, if the decay is through the enamel, the dentist prepares the tooth by removing that decay and puts filling in. That's really the only way to treat a cavity. Okay. So fluoride doesn't necessarily, we're not treating a cavity with fluoride. We're treating a cavity with a filling, okay? And so that's a clarification. It didn't come off very clear that it doesn't treat a cavity. It's not a medicament to fix the cavity. What we do add fluoride for, and what we see is prevention. We put it in when the teeth are being formed as a small child. when they're forming the permanent enamel, it's even, you know, prior to birth, they're getting fluoride through mother. They're forming their enamel very early in their development, and then as they ingest that through the system, their teeth are made hard. So we're preventing cavities way back when. The topical part that we put on, that's to fix little things that maybe the cavity may actually start to be getting, not cavity, the decay may start to just be decalcifying, just starting to get into the enamel. We can get that remineralized with fluoride, whether it be strong toothpaste, whether it be some special varnish that we can put on there. That strengthens it, but it's still not treating the decay. If there's a cavity, it gets a filling. So,
Okay.
if that helps to clarify that.
It's more of it's a preventative.
It's definitely a preventative. We're trying to, as they're being formed, as for the kids, we're trying to give them the best shot when they come out into their mouth and they're drinking Mountain Dew and they're sucking on a bottle and they're, you know, all those things that are environmental that we cannot control. That's their thing. We're trying to give them the best shot when they're forming their teeth so that the enamel is strong and can defend itself when they do put stuff on it.
Okay, so then I have a question too. And like I said, I'm trying to look at both sides of this.
Sure.
Let's say, you know, we have, because Diane's right, I work in a school. I see high school students that I'm just like, you know, and I give them breath and toothbrushes and I tell them go brush their teeth and they hate me for a day and then they're over it. But, okay, so we do have families, I don't care what your income is, but there's families that'll allow their kids, I do bus duty. They're 8 years old walking on the bus with a Mountain Dew. Or they put them in a crib with a bottle and they leave it in there. Okay, all these things are parental responsibilities. Okay, maybe it's their choice, they're not educated well enough, whatever the reason is. Is the fluoride in the water gonna prevent the potential decay? You know what I'm trying to ask? I mean, if they're doing all these things and they don't, you know, I don't know how many parents in here, when your kid getting ready in the morning, how many times, especially my oldest one, breathe. Okay, go brush your teeth. You know, I mean, they try to get out of the house without brushing their teeth. No, as a parent, we can't control everything, but it is our responsibility. And some people don't maybe give enough effort, and I'm not trying to cut them down on anyone in particular. I'm just saying, as a parent, it's our responsibility too. So I just wondered, these things, is the fluoride in the water going to make that big of a difference?
It's if we can give them that much more of a chance to not go through having an injection, having a filling, being put to sleep at the oral surgeons to have 14 teeth fixed, crowned as 8-year-olds. Yeah. Are you kidding me? If we can do, it's been proven that it does help scientifically, you know, scientific, and in my opinion, it does help, yes. The outside things, if we leave it up to them to add drops to their water, if they got to get a prescription for fluoride drops to put in their water, are they going to do that if they're going to give their kid the other things? You know, I just don't think it's going to happen. So, and then do they care if they put their kids through that? We're totally two different things. I just asked the council to look at it scientifically instead of, I mean, this is a hot button issue. If you take fluoride out of the water in Hampton, which if we're at a safe level, I'm good with that. If they can show that scientifically we're where we should be and the CDC is lowering it down like they talked about, I'm good with that. I just don't want it to be, you know, that we're heinously, you know, intrusion on your rights to, you know, we're throwing this in your water against everything you want. I just don't, I think, look at it scientifically, weigh the facts. If you don't have it, if you don't have the facts, if you need some more, take some time to look at it.
And that's what I was going to ask too, because boy, when you do look, unfortunately, and I'm not a true believer on everything on the internet, but you know, and I typed in fluoride in public water, pros and cons. Because like I said, I'm not trying to form an opinion yet. The cons, I mean, heavily outweigh the pros. Can somebody give me some places to go, to, you know, where to look and to read so I can hear more pros? Because you know, you do. Unfortunately, you put that in there and you get a ton of
Yeah.
cons.
And one of the things that I look at when we read professional journals, when you look at the information that's put out, you want to look at a refereed source. What that means is they have an editorial board that looks at things and says, okay, this is hearsay, we can't put this in. Your professional magazines, the ADA puts out a lot of things, and it's different than Reader's Digest. I mean, if you read Reader's Digest, you'll learn all about your health and what you can do to prevent everything. I mean, come on, you can put anything. Anybody can write anything in Reader's Digest or some of the other things. Blogs, internet blogs are just blowing up all over the place with this stuff. It's literally all over the place. One of the ones I found interesting, Dick, and you said, what are some of the side effects? What are the bad things? One of the most interesting ones I found was the Nazis put fluoride in the water in the concentration camps to make the Jews more docile.
And then you can read in another one that it's causing the rise of ADHD and ADD in our children. I mean, so it goes both ways.
But look at
absolutely
when
right.
you're looking at that scientific, proven, factual, well done studies. Look who pays for them as well.
Okay.
But look who's publishing it. Look who's putting their name and their stamp on that scientific evidence. If it's something, out there that you've never heard of or can't look and see who publishes it and who is behind that article or who's behind that publication, question it, because it can just be put in. Anybody can put anything in there. Look for the refereed journals that have people to stand behind the information. That's what I ask.
Thanks, Randy.
Bill Moore. To answer maybe a little bit more on Val's question there, we, local dentists, tried to educate the city manager, the mayor, and the city council on the fluoride issues before, and Steve and Craig and Ron were all here, and there was some disbelief as to some of the information that we dentists were actually presenting on fluoride, so we actually called Dr. Bob Russell, the chairman of the State Department of Public Health last time. Paul mentioned that. And we also brought an expert, Dr. Stephen Levy from the University of Iowa, and he spoke at some length on the benefits of fluoride. Unfortunately, you can find whatever you want to answer your question on fluoride. There's pros and cons out there. You can read whatever you want on the internet. You're going to find lots of pros, you're going to find lots of cons. Like Randy said, I guess what I would tell you is you got 3 professionals here, actually 4 with Randy, that have studied this for years and years and years, scientific evidence. I personally, if you guys were dentists and I was sitting up there and I was telling you that I've done all this studying, I've had the State Department Public Health person here, I've had an expert from the University of Iowa here, and they're telling you, my personal feeling is if you put that in at the correct level and monitor it and keep it at the correct level, everybody's going to benefit. Obviously, if it's too high or too low, you're taking some of the benefit of it. We just just after I received Sean's letter, the very next day, all the dentists in the state of Iowa received the Eye Smiles monthly newsletter for March of 2013, and it reminded us that fluoridation is one of the top 10 public health achievements in the 20th century. I guess I'm hopeful that our mayor and the city council doesn't take us back to the 19th century, and we dentists have fought hard the last time and tried to explain everything as best we could, and we're certainly hopeful that the mayor and the council does not take this great benefit away from the citizens of Hampton. So one of the things that has been hard for me to understand with our last fight and the discussion tonight is, why does fluoride get such a bad rap when we are putting chlorine and bleach in our water, which both are known carcinogens, and nobody says a thing about chlorine or bleach, you know, when we know that that can cause cancer. And so I guess that's one closing note that I would have is, you know, why does fluoride get such a bad rap?
Hi, Stephanie Arnold. I'm a registered dental hygienist as well, so that makes 5 and Shelley 6 dental professionals in this room tonight. I live in Hampton, but I currently practice out of town, and I do see children that live in areas where the fluoride is not adequate. I do see a lot of children, and I think if you walked a day in any of our shoes and saw these children that have extreme dental decay, pain, I mean teeth where they have bombed out, totally decayed, 6-year molars. So this child is 6 or 7, whatever. And they need a root canal, which is expensive, or they need to have that tooth pulled. That tooth is supposed to be there for the rest of their life, and it's going to affect them for the rest of their life. Not only that tooth, but it affects the other teeth as well. So please fight for our children.
Next. Any questions or any other? Go ahead, Dick.
I've got one for, probably for Doug or maybe Terry. Did I understand you correctly that the point that these tests are being taken as far as the fluoride level is not consistent, or maybe it's not accurate? Is there anything that we can do within our system to provide a more precise measurement of the actual fluoride level in the water as it goes to our citizens, to our kids?
I think we could sample it, probably at the water tower, couldn't you, Terry, to get
I
an
can- I
average,
can-
but you have a
I can
blended
think it was
system.
any part of the distribution
Yeah.
system. It's not, with fluoride, it doesn't really, like chlorine, it doesn't dissipate. You know, what, the level you put in should be the same level as at the end.
Well,
There's no
part of the
inaccuracy.
issue that I was hearing was different wells provide a different amount of fluoride.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are we doing the best job that we can to add the correct amount of fluoride based on the draw from the various wells that we use?
I think historically, you can go back and probably one of the smartest things, if hindsight, playing armchair quarterback, should never got rid of your deep Jordan aquifer wells and went with these 4 shallow, but they're not, they're classified as deep, but they're 40, 50 foot deep out of the industrial park area. And then you could have put in an aeration system and filtration system and put a treatment plant with a deep Jordan aquifer well, and we would have got consistent. You could have got real consistent all the time because you're drawing from the same aquifer. But now that we have this blended system, you know, we add a little bit to hit the DNR levels that they're asking us to do. It's one of those kind of careful what we wish for, because if we wanted to run well 3 more and use that every day, we could do that. What we'll find though is a lot more rusty water complaints, a little bit more turbidity in the water. It's correct, don't get me wrong, it's best water I think that we have available to us as well 3, but we should also add then an aeration system and maybe a treatment plant there to get the water quality. Other than fluoride, there's a lot of unique features to water, characteristics other than just fluoride. You know, if we're looking at fluoride being our #1 concern, I don't necessarily know that anybody in the water field would necessarily agree with you. You know,
I guess my question is, I'm not trying to make it simple, but are we doing the best job that we can to provide, I mean, I've done less research than you did as far as this fluoride situation, so I'm not going to even try and stand here and say I know whether it should or shouldn't be in there, but are we doing the best job that we can to use the blended sources to always hit the mark on the fluoride that's going to the public? Or can we improve on that?
Right now, we're, sorry, Doug, but right now, we're right in the ballpark. You have your 0.8 to a 1.0 to meet in between there.
We have our water quality report that we do every year that we have to submit and get done, and it gets approved by the DNR. And I don't have it in front of me right now. I could probably run in the other room, maybe grab one, but we're hitting the mark. We're hitting what the DNR's telling us to do. Can we, if the question is, can we hit that mark without adding it? I don't know.
No, that wasn't my question.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
my
we're hitting
understanding
the
from
mark.
what you said before was that there were a lot of fluctuations there, and you weren't sure exactly, maybe I misunderstood, that you weren't sure exactly where we were on the total water supply. So if that's the case, I'm good.
Our averages in testing are coming out. You know, it's water's a different thing. It has a different characteristic in the winter than it does in the summer, but I think we're doing a good job.
How much variance are you getting, Doug?
I don't know, Terry, on the average, what's your low and what's your high, you think? Your two extremes.
Average is, right now, we go by percentage. I don't think we ever drop below a 0.7 on it.
Okay.
You know, we're in there, but that might be one day's testing, but the next day it's right back up there again, so.
Do you know
And
what
that's compared by our amount of flow that we're getting. Some days we pump 300,000 gallons, 300,000, next day we'll pump 400,000. So, you know, it's gonna fluctuate.
Well, I guess that was what I was wondering. You said that the recommended or the required levels are range between 0.8 and 1.0. So what, I guess I would like
They
to know
take that
what your
average.
range is, rather than the average, what's your range? What has, in the last however many tests, you know, what is the range? Is it,
We're right
if
around
it
the-
ends up between 0.8 and 1.0,
0.8,
then you are.
0.9, right in there. So
Right.
we're in that
Right.
range, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that's what you want, so I guess that would answer your question, Dick. They are doing everything that they can because of the end results are showing that.
As long as it was in the range. that's
Right.
all we can hope for.
But with the system we have, it's only gonna pump one amount. So if I pump, in the summertime, I'm gonna have to turn that system up because we're gonna pump more water in the summertime to keep the range up. In the wintertime, we're gonna have to turn it down because the system does not fluctuate with the flow. If the town starts using more water, the system I have does not adjust to that.
You manually adjust it.
Yeah, you gotta go in and manually adjust it. That's how it's,
Okay.
you know, it's done.
You test this every day?
Every
You
day,
test it every day and you add it every day?
every day. Yep.
Find what you're looking for, Doug?
I apologize, I didn't. I wish Robbie was here, darn it, but, and we're soon to go. And actually, I think, Doc, weren't you getting it tested once in a while too, or not?
Well, I haven't been recently.
Because we've been doing it.
Let me just add one little thing. As an old council member, I was on the council for 10 years. When we built the filtration plant out here, only 4 wells were used, the ones that are out by the industrial park and the airport. All that water came to one spot. It could be measured and checked. It could have the fluoride added, and it went out to the public. The 2 deep wells that they mentioned had been closed because they had a lot of mineral content in them, and people complained a lot about the iron and all of that crap that came along with it. So we built a filtration plant in, and all the water went through it with the intent that we clean our mains. If you keep running clean water, the mains will get better and better, and eventually you won't have so much crud. And they can tell you there's crud in the water when they cut these things, aren't there? Oh, yeah. The bottom of every one has a bunch of junk in it. At some point after, when I was gone, so I can't tell you when it took place, somebody decided that they would tap those deep wells again and start pumping in. And they're pumping it in erratically, you know, like you said, maybe a couple times every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. And so you get an influx of water that is not landed at the plant and filtered at the plant. It comes into the system differently, and it's added over in the east side of town, right?
Yep.
And the rest of the water comes down through the mains from out of the airport area. That's where it becomes very difficult to tweak it to the proper amount, because who turned on the well when and for how long? If somebody forgot to turn it off, you get a whole flood out of well 3, and it's not filtered and it's not having fluoride added to it. It's close to being what it ought to be, but unless you were to blend it constantly at a set rate and never change, you can't do that because the city demands different amounts at different times. But that's kind of the history of the whole thing, and how you ever figure out. I think they're trying to do the best job they can, taking water from 2 sources, so to speak.
It's tested every day.
Anyway, that's kind of how we got to where we're at.
And on the same, every quarter, I actually do take a sample from the system, because that one comes from system, and that gets sent into a lab, and just to double check my testing. When we first started it, the state actually made you send a sample into them every month. And then they would test it, and then, what was it, once a year? They used to send you 3 different samples that you didn't have a clue, and then you had to test that and send them back the results. So they kept, now they haven't done that anymore, but I do every quarter take a sample and send it in, so.
Anything else to add? Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Sean.
Well, if there's nothing else, then before I call for any potential motion, I'd just add that the only question I'm asking is what's the potential role here in the city versus, as Val mentioned, parental responsibility. I hear what the dentists are saying. I hear what Mrs. Weldon and Mrs. Arnholtz are saying about the children. My question is proper role of a city government, and you know, also I think Doug sent out some cost numbers to you guys, the cost of the city. I've heard more arguments in this chamber, I think, over amounts of less than $5,000 than I have over big numbers, and this is in the range of, you know, 8,000. So those are the considerations to which I bring the question. So here, if there's no further comments or discussion at this time, I'd like to have a motion one way or the other. Again, I'm asking for a...
Do we need a motion on the ordinance already exists? If we're going to keep it, there shouldn't be a need for a vote.
Well, what I'm asking is to instruct the city attorney to draft a repeal.
Okay.
And I guess what I would ask then, and I want to make it real clear, I've just been playing devil's advocate here because I didn't realize I was going to have so many professionals here that could answer some questions that came up since you guys were here with, I mean, this has been great discussion. I guess what I'm asking is, before I do a motion, I would like more time. I mean, I would like to, you know, I didn't even think about the professional journals. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't. I did try to use credible sources. You know, I looked at the website, or I looked at who I was, you know, getting the information from. But clearly, I haven't gotten enough. Because, I mean, I'd like to look at, too, you know, my concern is, I think as you know, we get more technology and we're educated so much faster, it's all about choice. And I'd like to look into also, you know, you gotta think about some of these kids, you know, like I said, I work in a school that don't, you know, the parents don't push them to drink water. And I'm not trying to push blame on anybody, I'm trying to see this from both angles. Maybe some of these, my kids were drinking water, bottles of water from the minute they were, you know, I could get them to. I mean, to me, water's always been very important. I'd like to look into that a little bit more. So I guess I would like more time, in my opinion.
Any other thoughts? Nobody?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I think that I looked at this X number of years ago and I'm winding up the same place I was before, so I'm good with either way.
Okay, all right. We'll take no action then tonight. Thank you, everybody, for your input. Very helpful. Appreciate that. Next item on the agenda is discussion of process for city disposal of city brush and wood. And I asked for this to be on the agenda only because I think we cleared up the confusion with Kevin at the last meeting. And the only reason I was asking, I wanted to see if there was any interest from the council in getting something in writing as to what that agreement might entail. I didn't know if that might clear up any potential confusion, or I just wanted to make sure both parties were clear on what the agreement was. And if everybody's cool with the way it is now, then that's fine. We don't have to change anything. But I didn't know if there was interest to put something right.
Are we responsible if anything gets out of control or if something would happen?
Once it's Kevin's property.
It's yours, it's yours?
Yeah.
No.
Now, Doug and I are of an understanding that once it comes out of that truck,
Okay.
Oh, if it falls on your foot, you're not gonna call me up?
well, maybe you, but.
Okay.
Can't have everything.
No, and, once it's dropped out of the city's truck, it's my problem. I disperse all the branches and burning and all the bad stuff. No, whether you get some of the good stuff. And something I forgot to tell you all the other day, and I don't know if it was the day before or the day after, I did contact, Brenda DeFries. She's with the Boy Scouts. And I laid it out to her, you know, if they want to come out and cut, you know, I would cut for them, maybe put a couple of the adult men on the splitters if they wanted to come and get firewood to sell to people with fireplaces, or maybe campfire wood for the summer just so they could generate money. I laid it out there for her, balls in her court. You know, if she responds and wants to do it, fine and dandy. If they don't, that's fine and dandy too. But that way, you know, at least it goes, a little bit of it goes to a benefit to help them. Organization out. So we'll see what happens with that.
Now, are you gonna take from private citizens also? I had a citizen ask me the other day, since the city won't take their brush, their trees, what they should do with it. I gave him your name.
That's a good question. We didn't discuss
Just,
that.
you will
did we?
have, I mean, you're gonna have the public here shortly is gonna be trimming their own trees.
I don't know.
I don't think we put a ban on the public dropping their.
Are they stuck in?
Yeah, I think what we would do is, you know, if there's some, an opportunity then for us to just pick it up at our compost site, take it out to Kevin's, that's probably what we would do if it's, you know, that's one sure way of just getting rid of it and let it accumulate. We can truck it out on occasion when we have time and do things of that nature. If it's small, we can still add it in for, you know, into the compost.
This is someone that had several trees.
Okay.
I mean, they, you know,
We-
we're not
we
taking
weren't-
trees,
If
they
they're
got trees.
over,
They're big trees.
yeah, if they're over 18 inches in diameter, yeah, we won't take them. Yeah, they have to meet the size, but if they meet our size requirements, then we'll take them. But if it's bigger than that, Kevin will.
What,
It's up to him.
but it was private trees on private ground, it wasn't in the city's right of way, correct?
Right, private,
So it's
private
classic,
property.
they're having somebody commercially drop it, or?
Do it themselves.
Good luck on that one. Had more fun. Yeah, I don't know. That's classified, I suppose that's classified as commercial then. I suppose I probably better get my name to City Hall or my number, and that's a good answer, that's a good question. It's one we haven't approached yet.
Okay.
No, that's not a problem.
But Doug, what you're saying is that if a private individual brings wood to the compost site right now, your plan is to load it back up and haul it to.
As we have time, yeah, take it to Kevin's place and dump it off.
So we still don't have to burn it.
Right, yeah,
That's
we're
where
not
we're
burning.
headed.
Yeah, we're not gonna burn. That's what we've,
That's where
we're done.
That's where our
I'm not
road
sure
is
what the
headed.
question is, because if they cut their tree down in their backyard and take it to our brush site, it's
gonna
gonna
end
end
up
up at his
anyway.
place.
Yeah.
So-
Either way,
Right.
yeah,
Well,
if they
we can
want to
bypass
take
the
it to
city
his
hauling
place.
it out there, if he can dig it directly,
Well,
that's what I'm trying to.
the only thing I was asking her, she's talking tree.
Tree.
Well, they'll have to pay for it
What's your size
themselves.
limit out there?
18 inches, I believe.
Okay, there's-
Yeah, I don't use a bear net or not, I know my own tree,
Yeah.
but they were talking.
I guess that's kind of gonna be our guideline, I guess, there.
And that's been part of the problem with what we were taking is the commercial guys that had their own key were dropping off pretty monstrous trees. the fires occurred, no matter how they started, that's what was burning for days on end, giving us fits, was those great big pieces. But nonetheless, we don't want any burning at all. So I think we can accommodate what we need to, but that's up to Kevin if what he wants to do with the commercial aspect of it.
No, it's not a problem. I mean, it was around Hamilton and then Scallon and, was there, I seen one in the paper, was it affordable? I don't know.
Might be
Harrison.
3 or 4 in there, might get you the list.
Oh, yeah. I don't have a problem with it.
Well, if we aren't going that direction already, I think we're wise to have Doug and Kevin, or Doug, Ron and Kevin, draft an agreement. Get it, so there's no, so we have guidelines to follow, so that if the question comes up from another person as to why they can't get wood, it's not just some oral agreement. We should have something on file.
And I think we could go to the length whereas we, if Kevin's okay with it, there's some discussion here is that, you know, maybe we provide people a map, maybe even put that on the city's website for people that want to have a different option, that don't mind going out to Kevin's, they can.
Just save you some time with the trips out.
Right, so, you know, just to have the
Whatever you
information
like that.
available to where it'll be taken. So.
Yeah, we do, Kevin, on the off chance that somebody else comes up with a business venture like this too. We can't have an exclusive with just you, could we? I mean, it could happen.
Yeah, if y'all do, I mean, you gotta look at it as a council in the city.
Just
Guess we'll
one
cross
thing.
that, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but I have no problem with it. I mean, we'll see what, you know, if they got a better option or a better offer, hey.
Well, maybe, or in addition to,
Well,
you might be the
true.
same offer, so. I just appreciate you taking it.
No,
It's
not a
a big
problem.
burden off the city.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, that's what we were starting with that night. Well, I came here, I don't even know what it was, a city council meeting, we started talking over here. Then we set up a meeting, and then we got into the smoke issue and everything else, and so we kinda got a plan going down the road.
But Kevin, wasn't one of your concerns in this whole process taking all the wood?
Yes.
So that there wasn't any question about preferential, someone getting ash wood and some other person getting pulpy cottonwood, that sort of thing?
Well, yeah,
Is that why
that's-
you came to that agreement?
Yeah, there was, you know, how do I want to say? Let's say if there was 10 trees, you know, let's say there was 2 or 3 people, like you said. Okay, there's 10 trees that are coming down this week. Okay, who gets the 7 ash trees and who gets the cottonwoods to burn up, you know? It's, how do you divide that up? You know, so I said, let's just take it all, you know, and I'll get rid of the brush and I'll get rid of the big trunks, and, you know, the big trunks are gonna burn for 2 weeks, but so be it.
The true benefit to us is Kevin will take it all. Most of the inquiries that we get, they want just the good stuff. That's the issue. So the benefit is when Kevin says, I'll take it all, because he's gonna deal with the brush and he's gonna deal with the burning. These other folks are just basically looking for firewood, which is a little ironic, because I think it was just in the last year, we opened it up for people last year to go out there and cut your own firewood. And I had one person, from my understanding, staff advised me there was one person showed up, and that person showed up, and when he said he had to sign his name on the line, or, you know, we had a form to fill out, and because he had to sign his name, he didn't want any part of it, and he left, so, without taking any. So we really never did see any fruits of that effort that we put forward there for folks, so I think this is a good deal.
But Kevin probably would have stepped forward a year ago, but he only comes to town about twice a year.
Yeah.
No, oh, no.
Yeah, I wish.
Thank you for doing
You
what
bet,
you're
not a
doing.
problem. Thank you.
All right. Does that sound agreeable then to everybody? Kevin and Ron and Doug draft a written agreement?
When would you like to do that?
Talk with Ron and set it up.
Yeah, well, Doug and I will talk and we'll figure out
Okay.
what we as a city think should be in it, and then we'll call you and see
Okay.
what you want in it.
All right. Next on the agenda is consideration of approval of reappointment of Jim Davies and Christina Rash to the Hampton Historic Preservation Commission, terms expiring in 2015. Jim, you gonna vote on this tonight? Your name's actually in this one.
Yes.
Okay, any questions or take a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay,
How much of that $200 is your salary on this deal?
None.
I have a motion by Steve, do I have a second to approve?
Second.
Any further discussion?
They're not gonna start asking for a bunch of money now, are they? Are they gonna support it?
Well, it's a board decision to request funds. I'm only one member.
Okay. There's no further discussion and call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is consideration of approval of adoption of Resolution 2013-06, a resolution adopting the annual budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014. And I'll refer the reading to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the city of Hampton, Iowa has prepared a budget detailing expected revenues and expenditures for fiscal year July 1st, 2013 to June 30, 2014, whereas a public hearing has been held concerning the proposed budget on this 11th day of March 2013, whereas it has been approved by the City Council. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of Hampton, Iowa, that the proposed budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014 is hereby approved and adopted, and the city manager is hereby authorized and directed to file the adopted budget with the Franklin County Auditor and the Iowa Department of Management. Whereupon Mayor Dietz declared Resolution 2013-06 duly passed and approved this 11th day of March 2013.
Okay. Any questions or further comments at this time regarding the budget? Call for a motion then to approve the resolution.
So moved to approve.
A motion by Dan, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Steve. A motion by Dan and a second by Steve to approve and adopt Resolution 2013-06, approving the fiscal year budget for the year 2014. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the vote. Eckhart?
Aye.
Davies?
Aye.
Harms?
Aye.
Crowley?
Aye.
Luckensmeyer?
Aye.
Auguback?
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Okay. If there's nothing else, I'd call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7:17, and we are adjourned, thank you.